Welcome back to Merizo TV. I'm so excited to have you here again and Happy New Year. I pray that this year brings you many amazing blessings and depth in the knowledge of God. We're starting a new series today, and what I'm trying to do is to lay the foundations of why I believe what I believe. And in doing so, I hope that I'm able to strengthen your faith and give you tools to be able to reason through some of the questions that we have in believing and following the Lord. Today, if we want to know anything, we hardly start from the very beginning. For example, if we want to learn how fast a vehicle is moving, we don't need to invent the tools to measure velocity all over again. We can just take the knowledge that we already have in the world today and use that as it is. And to a large extent, this is how we know God. God has revealed himself through generations. And in our time, we have an opportunity to build our life on the knowledge that has already been established over the past generations. I know people often say that I don't have proof, I don't have evidence for some of these things that we believe. But the thing is, if we want to prove every principle, every law, every theorem we have in the world today, before we get on a plane or get in a car, what we'll end up doing is we will be stuck in research. A lot of people have laid down their lives to dig out these principles, to articulate them, and share them with the world. And this is the same for our faith. This is the same for Christianity. A lot of the knowledge of God that we can know is already being established. There's really nothing new. But to be honest, there are times that we need some deep questions answered so that we can strengthen our faith. And I do envy a lot of people that just have a high affinity to believe. They just learn something about God and it makes sense to them. There's no battle in their soul to discover why is this so. And I envy those people. But for a few other people, we need to reason through the complexities, the hardness of these situations. And I have good news. If you're somebody like that, God has a place for you as well. Oftentimes, God gives us this ability to query and question some of the norms that we have so that when we find the answers, we'll be able to provide those to other people that are having the same doubts. 2 Corinthians 1 3 to 4 says that God comforts us in all our troubles. You can also read questions so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from the Lord. So when we have questions and the Lord answers them, it gives us tools to be able to help other people who have the same questions to overcome their doubts and have faith in the Lord. So with this background, I have highlighted 12 things that we want to talk about in 12 videos. So this series called Foundation of Faith, we'll be looking at 12 crucial things ranging from who is God, why is Jesus God, why should we trust the Bible, what is God's idea of the family and marriage, what happens in the afterlife, what is sin, what is judgment, what is salvation, and many more things like that. At the end of this series, we'll be able to have a holistic idea of the core foundations of the Christian faith. We'll also be able to connect the dots because if everything God made was good, why is there sin and evil in the world, for example? So stick with me in this series as we unpack these foundations of faith. The first question we will be dealing with is, who is God? In summary, God is the creator of all things. It is common knowledge today that there is nothing that is in existence that has not been made. Look at all the technology around. Look at all the complexities, the intricacies of how each part works together. it will be dishonest to say those things just appeared out of nowhere. Nature, humanity is far more complex than the most complex computers we can have. And yet, a lot of people believe this appeared out of nowhere or this evolved for billions and billions of years. Even if evolution were to be true, something must have kicked off the initial process. But I do not agree with the entire concept of evolution. I believe in evolution for fine tuning certain things, but not evolution from non life to life. There is no evidence of evolution from non life to life. What we basically have is adaptation of life to the changes in the environment. Of course, the changes are also caused by other things in the same environment. So it's sort of a cyclical process. But to say that from nothing came something is absolutely dishonest. If we thread the path of time back to the very beginning, the first spark of life, the first breath, the first ray of light, the first body of knowledge, at the very beginning, we will find God. So, God is the creator of all things. It is also often said that the earth or the universe exists eternally, but evidence has shown it is constantly expanding. So that means if we follow that path to the past, we'll see that there was a point of beginning. This is the evidence why we say there was a creator. And let's assume we know nothing about God. The only thing we know is that he created all things. And for the most part of history, this was agreed upon. Now, having looked through many of the resources that try to define God, there are few other features of what God can be, a few other characteristics that we can tie to God. I like to call them the omni features: the omniscient, all knowing, the omnipresent, presence everywhere, and the omnipotent, all powerful. Considering the scale of creation and all existence, it is safe to say that God, the creator, has absolute ultimate power. It's safe to say that he knows everything. When we look at the complexity of how system works, courtesy science, we'll see that many things work by set principles. So it's safe to say that the Almighty God has all knowledge to be able to chart the course of the life of every created thing in the same way that creators and designers and inventors determine the rules and the principles by which their creation work. Also, omnipresence, being everywhere. Now, there's a point about omnipresence that has morphed into pantheism, for example, that everything is God, God is everything, or panentheism that says God is in everything. There's a thin line here. It is true that God is everywhere and God leaves a signature in everything, but it will not be accurate to say that God is in everything. When we told the path of God is in everything and then follow that path long enough, we begin to hear people say, God is in me, I am God. That's where it eventually leads. But that's not how God designed things to be, as we will soon see. While God made everything, he's still distinct from his creation. And that is a key thing to note. We often say God is in everything and everything is in God. That saying is implying that without something, then God is incomplete. So if God is in everything and we take out a piece of everything, then God cannot be complete anymore. But that's not how things are. God is infinite in power, is transcendent, and separate from his creation. And so, even if we take out everything in existence, it will not reduce God one bit. Is God eternally, and it's a privilege that creation is in existence because he made it so. An interesting point about omniscience is God knows everything. And this often results into a conundrum where if God knows everything and God is all powerful, why are things out of control? We will get there in a bit, but I want to paint a picture about omniscience. Omniscience is not just knowledge of everything that is, it's also knowledge of everything that could be. Although God designed some things to work in a certain way and He has given agency, that means the ability for the creation. For example, man to determine the course of action. Oftentimes, things don't go as God has designed, but that does not mean they're outside of the knowledge of God. Since God knows all things as they are, and all things as they could be, and all things as they could have been, is able to chart a path, even from how things have gone wrong back to how things should be. So God is not out of his wits when the earth is upside down. There is a path for course correction. There is a path for realignment. There is a path for re-entry, for every divergent creation, for every rebellious creature to be able to come back to the divine purpose. This is a powerful perspective to omniscience, as we will see in the concept of sin and salvation. God doesn't just know where we are right now, He knows where we could be. And because He's all powerful, He's able to take us, no matter how far back we have fallen, to take us back to where we could and we should be. And the last point here about omnipotence, which will lead us to who is man, is that God is all powerful. This means, hypothetically speaking, that He can do anything and everything. But with power comes great responsibility. The demonstration of God's power is not in random displays of power. It is in principled, controlled use of that power. In the same way, we would say that the sign that a person is powerful is not that they just go about dealing with people. Is that when the time for intervention arises, they can be trusted to intervene. A powerful person walking about the street, knocking people, kicking people out, is not really a powerful person. He's a wicked person. God is all powerful. Yes. He can do all things. Yes. Will He do everything? Maybe not. He has set things in place. He has set rules in place. And even He complies with His own laws. This is the epitome of power, that although all things can be done, all things are done in order. And it demands the same from us. Still speaking about God's almighty power, let's take a look at creation. Why did God make everything? If He's sufficient by Himself, if He's self-sufficient, why is creation in existence? Why are we here? And I'll take us through the scriptures. It's interesting that I'm jumping straight into the Bible right now, because we have not even laid the foundation of why we should believe in the Bible. But yeah, sure, in one of the videos in this series, we talk about why is the Bible trustworthy. But permit me to take a look at the Bible while we establish some of these points. Psalm 19, verses 1 and 2. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the work of His hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they display knowledge. Creation is an illustration of the power of God. It is an illustration of the ability of God. In order to deepen our knowledge of God, we also need to deepen our knowledge of the creation. This is one reason why work of our hands or natural knowledge, science, helps us. As we go deeper into how things work, we encounter things, laws, principles that make us marvel at the wonder of God. But at this point, we know creation is an illustration. It is a story that God is telling about Himself. Also, Romans 1 verse 20 says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature has been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that the people are without excuse. So all of creation is an illustration of God's power, God's ability, and God's nature. We're trying to lay the foundation of who man is. Now we know that creation is an illustration, God telling a story. Who is man? But before we get there, creation is an illustration of what God can do. And so in the trees, we can talk about how God is eternal. Even though a story is not the full picture, we can see that a tree is self perpetuating. Trees can live for thousands and thousands of years. In the animals, in the birds, we can see magnificence, we can see speed, we can see strength, we can see vigor, we can see focus, we can see vision in the eagle. And so all of these things are illustrations of one thing or the other about God. Even spirits. So spirit, often in the scriptures, we see spirit of love, we see spirit of courage. It is safe to say that even spirit are illustrations of certain abilities in God. We can see knowledge, we can see strength, we can see faith, we can see love. And so even spirits are an illustration of something about God. Now, all of creation says one thing or the other about God. Each element in creation is specialized, telling only one story, so that by many stories we can have a full picture. Each element in creation is making a sound, and the entire combination of all sounds is a beautiful symphony that tells us who God is. Now, what is man? All of creation tells the story of what God can do and all the beautiful descriptions of God, his works, his attributes, and things like that. But man is an illustration of who God is. So creation is an illustration of what God does and what he can do and the things that describe God. But man is an illustration of who God is. So the scripture says, let us make man in our own image. So man is the part of nature that tells us who God is, what God looks like. So if we have an opportunity to set our gaze on God, the creator of all things, then we would see that he has the shape that we have. I know that's a bold statement, but we will see that in the scriptures. If we want to know what God can do, let's take a peek at nature. But if we want to know who God is, let's look at man. Genesis 1:26 says, let us make man in our own image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and over all the wild animals, and over all creatures that move along the ground. God is Lord over all of creation. So all of creation talks about his attributes, what he can do, what he's like, but man talks about who God is. We can see that corroborated in the instruction and in man's creation mandate to have dominion over all things. Is this making sense? So this teaches us that God is all powerful, is all knowing, and is everywhere, but also that man is special. One question that may quickly jump at us is, if man was made to mirror God's nature, why do we have people who are so complicated, so wicked? Why is there suffering? I mean, if nature is a story and an illustration that God is making, why are there so many terrible things? It is true that there are a lot of ungodly things in creation, but it is also true that we can find many, many beautiful things. While there's wickedness and a lot of evil in the world, we can also acknowledge there's a lot of beauty and grace and glory in creation. But why is there so much evil? If God knows all things and is all powerful, then why are things so complicated? While we will talk about the nature of sin and salvation in the next video, I want to mention one point. Now, because man is made to mirror God, it means he can do as he likes. And that liberty and agency is the origin of all the irregularities we see in the world today. God is good, no doubt about that. And he's all powerful. He can do as he pleases, but he chose to do what is pleasing. And because man is made in that image, the image must also reflect agency, the ability to do as it pleases. But with that power comes great responsibility and great consequences. Man can do as he likes, but he will not do as he likes. If he does, there are consequences. And this is the origin of evil and wickedness and sin. We'll hold it here for today. Thank you for watching and don't miss the next video. God bless you.